Good morning, everybody. When something good happens, when something memorable happens, we naturally want to remember it. Because when we remember it, when we recall it, it kind of revives the happiness that we feel. Isn't that right? We want to keep the memory na bubuhayan tayo pag naaalala natin. The most common way of reviving memory is, of course, pictures. Laging may kodakan. Laging may take two. Ngayon, laging may waki. Yung iba, hindi na kailangan mag-waki. I'm sure, daming kodakan nangyari dun sa that famous manyanita. Because we want to remember. People come and go in our lives. And the way we are able to connect with them is we remember them with pictures. High school classmates natin, yung kasama natin sa trabaho, yung kasama natin sa kalokohan, our close relatives, members of our family. Sad sometimes na pag walang picture, it's so difficult to describe to grandchildren, for example, a grandparent, walang picture. Because recalling, remembering, it revives. Siyempre, there are those we do not want to remember. So, minsan nakakakita ko ng picture, kalahati na lang yung picture, tinanggal niya yung kanyang ex. Ayaw niyang maalala. Or there are some, batch pictures and they put XXX like that on the faces. I don't know what that is all about. Maybe it's the class bully you don't want to remember or something like that. All right? There was a survey and they asked people, what is the first thing you will rescue in a burning house? And you know what? The vast majority of people, ang kanilang i-rescue is the photo album. Because a refrigerator can be replaced. A picture cannot be replaced. But pictures are not the only ways we try to remember. We have other ways of remembering. Ito, regalo ni Lola. Ito, damit ni ate. Ito, perfume ni mami. At pag naaamoy ko siya, naalala ko si mama. I'd like you to think for a while. What is that object, other than a picture, that has a very powerful value for you because it reminds you of somebody that loves you and you love? Think for a while. What is there in your possession that is very, very precious? Because it's a remembrance of somebody. And when you see that object, parang, it brings back so many memories. What I remember is a small crucifix my mother gave me when I was grade 5. And you should see it. Grade 5 pa ako noon. So talagang ilang beses ko nang nahulog yun, naupuan yun, sira-sira na siya. It's very precious for me. In fact, I keep it where if I have to run away from a fire or something, I can immediately grasp it and save it. Take it immediately. Because the sentimental value there is priceless. In fact, in all our stages in our lives, we carry these objects. Pag magtatapon-tapon na tayo, ito, hindi natin matapon-tapon. I remember I had a counselee. She was a querida, and her boyfriend was married, and she decided, ayoko na, she wanted to move on, and she was asking me, Father, I need to move on. I'd like to return the gifts that he has given to me so that I'll be able to move on. So I asked her, what are the gifts he gave you? Well, Father, he gave me a condo. He gave me 2 diamond rings with matching diamond necklaces. He gave me a big screen TV, gave me a car. Father, he gave me a poodle, and he gave me a toaster. Well, I advised her, return the toaster only. I feel sad when I go to antique stores and I see these pictures of portraits, of paintings, of ancestors. They are for sale. They look so ulila. The owners do not want them anymore. Maybe they don't mean anything anymore. It does not spark any remembrance in the former owners. And of course, those people will buy them. Doesn't mean anything to them. Naaawa ako. Parang they're mga ulila doon, wanting to be adopted in a home. Kaya nga, naaawa ko when I see, yung mga portrait paintings of people, their homes. If you get a daughter-in-law from hell, Sus Maria Joseph, the first thing that happens when you go is your painting goes to the maid's quarters, and then to the CR, and then to the bodega, and then it is already for sale. And removing all traces of you. I was in Manila Memorial Park, and I was waiting for the mourners to come. So looking around, and wow, there was one lapida there that was very conspicuous. Why? Because it was covered with grass. Everything was nicely mowed, nicely landscaped. Ito, ang taas-taas ng talahib. And I went there, and nakasulat dun sa lapida, "We will never forget you." Goodness. Yung pinakamataas sa talahib doon. "We will never forget you." Halatang pinabayaan. Pero ganyan talaga eh. Ganyan talaga. That is why in the feast that we're celebrating today, the body and blood of Christ, it's all about a God who does not want to be forgotten. It's not we who do not want to forget Him. It's He who does not want to be forgotten. Ayaw niya. And He did not leave us pictures or monuments or medals or a lapida. He left Himself. The Holy Eucharist, the Blessed Sacrament, His body and blood. And this self is accessible, is made available through a meal. Di ba pag nag-aalala tayo, when we are into remembrances, there is always kainan. Can you imagine a birthday and an anniversary? Walang kainan. Well, it becomes forgettable. It's always in the context of eating and drinking. So Jesus, knowing that this is how we humans function, alam niya kung ano ang hilig natin, magsalo-salo. He says, "Do this in remembrance of me." Gather together, celebrate. Make me present, where again, I can give you myself. What is the presence of Jesus in the Holy Eucharist? You see the cross here behind me? It looks like Jesus. It is not Jesus. It's just a piece of wood. Instead, the host does not look like Jesus at all. But during this Mass, it becomes Jesus. His body, His blood, His soul, His divinity becomes truly present. Of course, down the centuries, people became more intelligent. They started to doubt, how can God be present there? And there have been so many Eucharistic miracles when people doubted the most. So many parts of the world, Eucharistic miracles, when the host becomes flesh talaga, and the blood is visible. They studied there was a study made about all these Eucharistic miracles, which continue to last. 400 years, 300 years ago, it is still there. In Italy, there is this monstrance. Every time it's the feast of the saint, the blood coagulates. And in all those studies, they studied them in this century, they found out that in all those Eucharistic miracles, the flesh that stays there, the host that has become flesh, is always The kind of flesh that is found in the human heart. Human heart. And the blood that is present there is a kind of blood that has just come from the heart. So alive. We have a Salesian cooperator. It's the third order of us Don Bosco. At 13 years old, two men tried to rape her. She escaped, jumped from a balcony, and she damaged her spine, and she was paralyzed. And she was 13 years old. In the next 30 years, she was bedridden. And after 30 years, she could not anymore take in any food. Her system was deteriorating. She was just taking Holy Communion. That was all she could take. That was all she could take, Holy Communion. And she lived for the next 13 years, just receiving exclusively Holy Communion. Wanting to tell us, as Jesus said in the gospel, my body is real food. My blood is real drink. It nourishes both our body and our soul. You know, when I was in college, we had a German teacher, a priest, German, teaching us physics. Eh, alam mo naman yung mga Germans, magagaling talaga sila dun sa scientific thing. And one time he showed us a Geiger counter. Geiger counter is like, it's like a tube like that, no? And it's able to count the amount of the presence and the amount of radioactive energy in something. So he had this little radioactive thing, and the Geiger counter was doing tick, 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 tick. So means it's radioactive. It's a Geiger counter. And he told us, I want you to experience something. And he brought us to the chapel. And the same machine, he put it in front of the tabernacle. And it was tick, 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 tick. There was energy coming out of the Blessed Sacrament. In Japan, you know, one time in one of these online masses, I was there watching the gallery after the mass. Everybody was, you know, whatever, eager to see each other. And I saw somebody in the gallery was crying. So after that, I called her up and asked, why were you crying? And she said, Father, I miss receiving communion sacramentally. I missed it so much. You know that in Japan, for 300 years, there was no sacraments. And after 300 years, when the Europeans were allowed to enter again, they discovered that the Christians remained faithful for 300 years. And they said, yes, every Sunday we will gather together, read the first reading, second reading, say the prayers, and then they were asked, what do you do during consecration? They were just silent and crying, making a spiritual communion. They were gathering at the danger, putting themselves in danger of death. And they were able to endure 300 years. They could be martyred anytime from this spiritual communion. In spiritual communion, you know, Jesus comes to us. In sacramental communion, we go to Him. In spiritual communion, He comes to us. He comes to us. And this spiritual communion can happen anytime, anywhere. All we have to do is to desire Him, to invite Him. There was this Catholic man from China, and he found out that taking opium was helping him in his stomach ulcer. When he started to take opium, he became an addict. And his confessor told him, you're an addict, you cannot take Holy Communion. So he could not take Holy Communion sacramentally. But there was never a day he missed receiving spiritual communion. When the Boxer Rebellion happened, that was a time when some Chinese fanatics were angry about foreign religions. They were killing Christians left and right. He died a martyr and is now a saint. He was able to endure it. He was able to die for his faith from receiving spiritual communion. You know, after some masses, I saw this crying lady again, and she was crying again. So I asked her, why are you crying? And she said, because I received Jesus and I'm full of joy. At this, by making himself the memorial of our remembrance of him, he is telling us, I am with you always. I am with you always. At this time of our history, at this time in the world, so many countries have largely forgotten God. Ang kanyang walang sawang pagmamahal, parang hindi na kailangan maalala. So, this COVID-19 is present. Ito ba ay parusa niya sa atin? Ito ba ay paalala para maalala natin uli siya? Maybe. Baka. Some people say that. But for me, it is not in order to scare us, to frighten us, to threaten us, to go back to Him. It is once more, once again, an assertion to us that this God, hindi niya tayo pababayaan. There is nothing that can separate us from Him. I will never leave you. Nothing can separate you from my love. Let me end with this lapida I saw at that time. And it refers very much to the Eucharist, what Jesus wants to say. It says, remember me not because you love me. Remember me because I love you. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Let us pause for a while and allow Jesus to speak to us.